If it's not too awkward, we'll get right to the talking. That's, of course, Bourrée. Is that how you pronounce it? It's a French word, Bourrée, by Jethro Tull. And when I started learning the flute, of course, whenever I'd play in public, especially like the rock music that I'm into, like the Beatles and the Dead and all that, people always wanted to hear Jethro Tull, and I'm just learning that. And the solo is really hard and it's really high pitched, but that's kind of my goal for this fall. Before the end of the year, I want to perfect that song, so we'll do the rest of it. But today, I have kind of a serious, somber topic, and I know I started with a song that I think is very happy and joyful, and it kind of reminds me of playing folk music and sitting around campfires in Wisconsin back in the day. And that sort of takes me to today's topic, in which I'm going to talk about September 11th. Because invariably, year after year, it's almost like a new kind of birthday that everyone knows about. It's amazing how people don't really ask about July 4th or Martin Luther King Jr. or any of these other holidays or events in America, but this is the one that people always ask about. Not even JFK anymore. That's not even talked about, really. I haven't heard, apart from a few older Europeans I've met, especially like black-pilled conspiracy theory types. I don't really get asked about JFK at all. But anyway, that's a long musical intro to get to September 11th. And I'm just going to tell my personal story so that I have it for once on camera, so I don't have to really talk about it anymore. Because to give one more caveat before I get right into it, it is a painful memory in the sense that I was very aware that many people unexpectedly were just snuffed out, just perished from the earth. And that's been heavy on my heart, just as the last report of the busload of children killed by also killed by also Arab weapons. Anyway, I was in high school at the time. I think I was 17 years old. And it was my last year of high school. And I was in pottery class, and that was one of my favorite classes. Like, I finally got to use the wheel and everything. And I really loved doing that. But we were working on pinch pots, which is kind of the boring basics of pottery, where you just take a lump of clay and you just pinch it out as evenly as you can. It's a real tedious exercise, difficult exercise. And I remember my final product that I worked quite hard on had so many of my smudges, and it was very uneven. So, but it was kind of a boring activity. And so we're sitting around at these tables and we're just pinching these pots. And one of the girls, like, there are a couple girls who sat across from me, these blonde girls who used to they didn't care. You know, high school students, like, they were very apathetic and everything, but they used to just make dirty jokes all the time. And one of the girls held the pot under the table and started making the sort of faces, like very inappropriate faces, just feeling the pot. And her friend was laughing. And the more her friend laughed, the more she got into it. But she was kind of embarrassed because the rest of us in the class were paying attention. Then suddenly, on the radio, it comes on, and we're listening to some stupid pop, rock, I don't know, I-94 type crap, Z100 type crap that we grew up with. And one of the DJ or whatever, he's saying, oh, well, I guess a plane hit a tower in New York? Like, he was totally confounded by it. This was just before lunch or whatever, but I didn't know what to think of it. I thought it was maybe just an accident, because that's how, like, these really peppy Logan Paul types, they want to spin it like that. They get paid for their attitude, and so and everyone wants to assume the best anyway. But we got sent out to lunch, and then in lunchtime, they all called us down to the auditorium, and we watched the towers fall together. It was a rough day. Like, we didn't have zoom-ins or anything, but like we were very much on. It was very much unfolding live in front of us, and of course, like, everyone jumped to all this conspiracy stuff and whatever, and it came out pretty early on that Bin Laden was responsible, or Bin Laden took credit. And I remember him from the USS Cole, actually, in the 90s, because, one of my older brothers has always been very turned on, well, I guess both, but one especially has been turned on to politics and these current events. And I remember us talking about the Cole and Bin Laden. And I remember my brother saying Bin Laden was a piece of shit and needed to die. And this was much before 9/11. Anyway, so of course classes, I mean, we went to class, but no one was actually studying or doing it. We were just all just watching the news collectively. I think we spent the rest of the day in the auditorium or in various classrooms with all the TVs on, just watching. A lot of us went home early. I stayed, and so did my girlfriend at the time. I had a high school sweetheart way back then. And we even shared a locker, and we did everything together. We were always together, like everyone knew about us in class. And so I found her, and we talked about it, and we tried to make light of it. We had a sense of humor about it, even like, especially later on, we would make jokes about it, which is many people are offended by. But I mean, that's a way of coping with tragedy. And I think it's an appropriate way. But we went to the grocery store together afterwards. And we were very straight-edge kids, we didn't drink or do drugs or anything. And but we did like junk food. And of course, when you're young, you've got all this metabolism and energy. It's a lot easier to just stuff yourself. And we got like this big box of chocolate cookies. And we went into her bedroom, and we sat down on her beanbag chairs, and we just ate cookies. And we turned off the radio, and we turned off the TV, and we just sat in silence together, and we just ate cookies, and I guess drank some coffee then, and I went home or something. And we realized right away that, of course, way out in Wisconsin where we were, of course we were fine. But I was worried about my family in Virginia, because I guess, in D.C. it happened on Virginia soil, I think. One of the attacks on that horrible, horrible day. And getting back from the grocery store, we noticed that all of the gas stations, they were all queued up very far. You'd never see this in the States, where I was. Of course, I see it every day in Vietnam, but back where I'm from, it's very unusual that you would see cars lined up to get gas. But everyone predicted that the gas prices would jump or something. Actually, nothing happened. The only thing that did happen was, right on the eve of my travels around the world, they decided to really change airport security and really kind of just mess it up. And I say that as someone who has taken planes in different parts of the world, and I know that in the States there's something uniquely strange about it. I remember being in Japan, Narita Airport, and taking off my shoes, and everyone was looking at me like I was crazy. Like, no, you don't have to take your shoes off here. And that really messed everything up, man. And so I remember after this happened, and it came out, it was Islamic terrorism, whatever. And I've always been like spiritually minded. I've always been a seeker, especially in those days at the start of college. That I went to whyislam.org, and they sent me a free translation, a generous portion of the Holy Quran. And it took me a few years to get through it. I didn't find it as compelling to read as, say, the King James Bible, but det Gusta bus nam despertanum est. Anyway, that's my memory of that specific horrible day. But to think of just 9/11 as one event is sort of wrong, because every year it's sort of like a day that we remember. And I remember the year afterwards, we all gathered and we counted as many rose petals as the victims, and we all dumped them into the river together. And that was a year after that. And I guess every year it's always just been kind of a gloomy day, and Michael Moore made that awful movie about it, and that made us all relive it again. I can't believe we paid to go see all that stuff, because it's sort of like in most world events, I'm fine with ingesting and talking and thinking about it, but that's one that it's just like, no, let's stop. That's enough. Or at the very least, let's make some jokes about it. And that sort of edgy humor, it actually took a lot of the edge off. And, okay, one more story quick. We're 10 minutes in. I wanted to talk about my September 11 in Saudi Arabia, because I was there one September 11, almost 3 years ago. I guess 3 years ago, meaning that my 3-year ban is almost over and I will be free to return to Saudi, although I have no plans of doing that at any time in the future. Don't worry, Mom, don't worry, my relatives. I'm fine, don't worry, I'm not going back to the Middle East anytime soon. But my Middle East, my Saudi experience when I was there in Riyadh teaching at King Saud University, I was in the food court, and I remember they actually had a burger joint called 9/11 Burger. 9/11 Burger. And it had like graphics of the Statue of Liberty and everything. I was going to take a picture of it, but one thing I noticed in Saudi is that when you took pictures of things, people get really upset. And seeing that as kind of an offensive thing, like, what is this? You're 9/11 Burger? You've got pictures of New York, and you're making, it's like this American burger joint, but it was Middle Easternized. I don't know. I never ate there out of principle, but I did eat at the Chinese place, and Arabian Chinese food is quite bizarre, but we won't get into any of that now. I have a lot to say about Saudi. But on the 9/11 that I was there, a crane crashed, and many of us remember the video. It was 9/11 2015. A crane crashed, and it killed a bunch of people, and that was shortly before a stampede. This is during the Hajj, during the pilgrimage. Shortly after that, there was a stampede. Many people died that year. It was quite strange to see, especially because everywhere that you go, you had pictures or screens. It was like 24-hour footage of the Kaaba everywhere that you go during the Hajj. And because of that, I was given an extra week, because we were already on vacation that week. Hajj week was like, I had a good timing when I went to Saudi because I got a paid week off right away. But then the king decided, because of the victims at the Kaaba on 9/11, that he would give us another week of paid vacation. I watched the entire Curb Your Enthusiasm series, and it got to the point where I was thinking in my head the same way that Larry David thinks and talks. It was a strange, strange September. But here it is, my third September 11 in Vietnam. And that's my September 11 story, so don't ask me again. And if we are going to talk about it, let's just make some really appropriate jokes. Over and out.